Welcome back to the Cold Case Project. Tonight, we confront a case of unspeakable horror, a crime so brutal it shocked the nation, leaving behind a family shattered and a relentless pursuit of justice. This is the story of Jessica Chambers, a young woman whose life was extinguished in a blaze of unimaginable violence, and the complex, frustrating path to finding her killer. On the evening of December 6, 2014, at precisely 8:10 p.m., the tranquil rural landscape of Cortland, Mississippi, was shattered by a horrific discovery. 19-year-old Jessica Chambers was found burning alive next to her car, which was also engulfed in flames. She had suffered catastrophic burns across her entire body. Investigators later determined that a flammable liquid had been deliberately poured on her, not just on her skin, but chillingly, up her nose and down her throat. Despite the heroic efforts of first responders, who rushed her to a hospital, Jessica succumbed to her horrific injuries early the next morning. Her death was ruled a homicide, a brutal act of violence that left the community reeling. In the aftermath of this shocking crime, authorities immediately launched a painstaking investigation. Jessica's car keys were later discovered along a road near the crime scene, a small detail that would become significant. To reconstruct her final hours, investigators meticulously examined her cell phone records and location data. Their analysis revealed that on the day of her murder, Jessica had spent the morning with two friends. Later, she went to her mother Lisa's house, where she took a nap. In the afternoon, she left after receiving a text message from an unknown sender. She told her mother that she was going to get something to eat and clean out her car. At approximately 5:30 p.m., Jessica was captured on surveillance video at a gas station, a mere mile and a half from where her body was later found. This was the last confirmed sighting of Jessica Chambers alive. The cell phone data provided crucial clues to Jessica's movements after leaving the gas station. It showed that she traveled to nearby Batesville, arriving around 6 p.m., but then returned to Cortland by approximately 6:30 p.m. The purpose of her trip to Batesville remains unknown. About 15 minutes later, at around 6:45 p.m., she placed a call to her mother, Lisa. Lisa later recounted that the call was unusually quiet, a subtle detail that in hindsight became chilling. By 7:30 p.m., Jessica's phone indicated she was driving towards the very area where she would be discovered engulfed in flames just a half hour later. Despite this detailed timeline of her final hours, authorities initially struggled to identify any suspects, and the case remained agonizingly unsolved. As Jessica was being treated by first responders, desperately clinging to life, she allegedly uttered a name, Eric or Derek. This single, faint utterance became a central piece of the early investigation. Law enforcement diligently pursued this lead, questioning nearly everyone in the area with those names. However, after extensive interviews and alibi verifications, all individuals with those names were eventually ruled out. Her boyfriend at the time, Travis Sanford, was also questioned, but he had a confirmed alibi. He was incarcerated in jail on the day of her murder, effectively ruling him out as a direct perpetrator. Tragically, in an unrelated incident on March 15th, 2019, Travis Sanford was shot and killed at the home he shared with his girlfriend and her two children in Cortland. The alleged shooter, Myron Ardle Powell Jr., claimed the motive was a dispute over a dice game from the previous night, where Powell had lost $700. While this had no direct bearing on Jessica's case, it added another layer of grimness to the lives touched by this initial tragedy. The case of Jessica Chambers remained cold for over a year, but behind the scenes, investigators were relentlessly pursuing new leads. In February 2016, a significant development occurred. Quentin Tellis was indicted on a capital murder charge in Jessica's death. Tellis was a known individual to law enforcement, with prior convictions for burglary, drug possession, and fleeing from police. Crucially, he had also been arrested in 2015 for the murder of another woman, Ming Chin Xiao, in Monroe, Louisiana. In that case, investigators connected him through the use of Xiao's credit cards after her death and through cell phone and text records. He had known Xiao for a few weeks, and they were reportedly romantically involved. He was also the last person who texted her before her death. This parallel case highlighted Tellis's disturbing pattern of behavior and the methods he seemed to employ. When initially questioned about Jessica's murder, Quentin Tellis changed his story multiple times, a red flag for investigators. He first claimed to have only been with Jessica during the morning of December 6th. He asserted that he had gone to a store in Batesville around the time of her murder, attempting to establish an alibi. Surveillance video from that store did show Tellis present at 8:26 p.m. More than 15 minutes after the fire was discovered, not during the critical period leading up to it. However, investigators possessed more damning evidence. Location data from both his and Jessica's cell phones. This data indicated they were together until around 7:30 p.m. Moreover, it showed that Tellis had traveled to and from Batesville at the same time as Jessica earlier that evening. When confronted with the undeniable cell phone evidence, Tellis altered his narrative. He claimed he was with Jessica until around 7 p.m. and that a friend had picked him up that night. This alibi, too, quickly crumbled. When authorities questioned his friend, the friend stated he had been at a football game in Nashville that night, an alibi that was confirmed, definitively disproving Tellis's claim. Faced with these mounting discrepancies, Tellis changed his story yet again. He now claimed that Jessica picked him up that night, and they went to a Taco Bell in Batesville. He then stated they returned to his house and sat in his driveway, listening to music, and that she left at 7 o'clock p.m. However, Jessica's cell phone's location data, combined with surveillance video from a gas station next to Tellis's home, contradicted this. Her phone showed she left his vicinity at 7:30 p.m. and drove directly to the remote area where she was later found on fire. Authorities found it extremely unlikely that Jessica encountered someone else in the crucial 30-minute window between leaving Tellis's home and being discovered engulfed in flames. A sample of Tellis's DNA was taken, and it proved to be a match for DNA found on Jessica's car keys. These keys, it was discovered, were located along a path directly between the crime scene and Tellis's sister's nearby home, suggesting a foot escape route. Furthermore, surveillance video revealed a vehicle, believed to be his sister's, briefly stopping at Tellis's home at 7:50 p.m. before driving towards the crime scene. Additional surveillance footage indicated that Tellis had changed his clothes 3 times that day, behavior inconsistent with an innocent person. The most damning evidence, however, came from Tellis's cell phone itself. Within an hour of Jessica's murder, Tellis had meticulously deleted all communications with her from his device and ceased checking on her, despite having been in constant contact in the days leading up to her death. The deleted messages revealed a disturbing pattern. In the week prior to her murder, Tellis had repeatedly and aggressively asked Jessica to have sex with him. Each time, she had denied his requests. Even more critically, the messages showed she had denied him sex 4 times on the day of her death. Prosecutors presented a chilling theory of the crime. They believed that while in Tellis's driveway, he made another attempt to have sex with Jessica, which she resisted. Enraged by her refusal, he then allegedly suffocated her until she was unconscious. To distance himself from the crime, he then drove her car to the remote area where it was later found. He then ran on foot to his sister's nearby home, took her car, went back to his own home to retrieve gasoline, returned to Jessica's car, and, in a final act of unimaginable cruelty, set it on fire with her still inside. Tellis's defense, in contrast, focused on the possibility that the person Jessica had allegedly identified as Eric or Derek was the real killer. Tellis himself told police that a sex offender named Derek Holmes had been stalking Jessica, and some residents claimed to have seen them together. However, Holmes was thoroughly investigated and ruled out by authorities based on his alibi in multiple interviews. Furthermore, medical doctors and other experts testified that given the severe injuries to Jessica's mouth and throat, it would have been extremely difficult for her to articulate any name properly. And importantly, her cell phone records showed no communication with anyone named Eric or Derek in the 30 days leading up to her murder. In October 2017, Quentin Tellis went on trial for Jessica's murder. Initially, a dramatic moment occurred when the verdict was read as not guilty. However, it was immediately discovered that the jury had misunderstood the instructions, as many of them had actually voted for guilty. An hour later, they returned, stating they could not reach a unanimous verdict, and a mistrial was declared. The prosecution, undeterred, pursued a new trial, which began on September 24, 2018, in a different county. But again, the jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict, and a second mistrial was declared. Prosecutors are currently facing the difficult decision of whether to retry Tellis a third time for Jessica's murder. In a significant development in February 2019, Quentin Tellis was indicted on murder charges in the death of Ming Chen-Xiao. He has since been transported to Louisiana, where he will soon face trial in her case. The pursuit of justice for Jessica Chambers has been an incredibly long and arduous journey, especially for her family. Sadly, Jessica's mother, Lisa Chambers, passed away on October 29, 2021, at the age of 52, without ever seeing justice fully served for her beloved daughter.
Hey, this is Tony from the Cold Case Project, where we focus on unsolved cases across the United States. Our mission is to bring attention to these unresolved mysteries that need your help. All the information we cover in these cases is readily available on the internet, but we rewrite and repurpose it for the purpose of these videos. Our goal is to spread the word about the thousands of unsolved cold cases still out there. Thank you for watching. If you want to help shed light on these cases, make sure to like and subscribe for more content. Your support can make a difference.
On the afternoon of August 21, 1989, 17-year-old Norman Ladner left his family's rural store to go hunting on their farm. When he hadn't returned for dinner by around 7 p.m., his parents, Norman Sr. and Charlotte, grew worried. They began searching the property, and Norman Sr. enlisted the help of friends. Shortly before 10 p.m., Norman Jr.'s body was discovered, having succumbed to a gunshot wound. Authorities arrived within minutes. Their initial hypothesis suggested Norman had fallen from a tree, leading to an accidental discharge of his gun. The coroner initially conveyed to Norman Sr. and Charlotte his near certainty that the death was accidental, a conclusion they initially accepted. However, the coroner later released his official findings, ruling the death a suicide. He stated that Norman died from a close contact wound that entered his right temple and exited his left. Norman Sr. and Charlotte firmly rejected this determination, asserting that their son was content and displayed no indicators of depression or suicidal thoughts. They were convinced his death was not self-inflicted. Norman Sr. reported that law enforcement made no effort to locate the bullet at the scene, and the rifle found was not fingerprinted. He contended that authorities never definitively established the recovered rifle as the weapon used. Additionally, Norman Sr. and Charlotte learned that Norman Jr. had a laceration on his head, the origin of which they could not explain. The coroner, however, identified a jagged root at the scene with blood on it, which he believed caused the laceration. Norman Sr. found this explanation implausible, arguing that for such an injury to occur from the root, Norman would have had to fall backward after being shot, a trajectory inconsistent with the other circumstances. Faced with what they perceived as official inaction, Norman Sr. and Charlotte took on the difficult task of searching through the blood and tissue at the crime scene themselves to find the bullet. Norman Sr. successfully located a bullet and observed blood and hair on it. Authorities, however, did not accept this as the fatal bullet, stating it was inconsistent with the coroner's ruling. His family believed the bullet's trajectory indicated he was lying on the ground when shot. The state's ballistics expert could not definitively determine if the bullet found by the family was fired from Norman's rifle. Furthermore, When the expert returned the bullet to Norman Sr. and Charlotte, they noticed it was different from the one they had initially provided, raising suspicions of a bullet swap. 3 weeks after Norman's death, Norman Sr. and Charlotte visited the medical examiner's office to challenge the suicide ruling. While there, a stranger approached Charlotte, pulling her aside. He sternly cautioned her not to reopen the case, implying that her other children could be endangered and that she would never discover her son's killer. This unsettling encounter yielded no answers from the medical examiner's office, where the official remained resolute in his ruling and refused to alter the cause of death. Norman Sr. decided to revisit the crime scene. Approximately 300 feet away, he discovered an unusual radio-like device suspended in a tree, lacking any visible buttons or dials. State authorities dismissed its relevance to the case and did not collect it as evidence. Undeterred, Norman Sr. brought the device to a former DEA agent, who identified it as a signal transmitter utilized by drug traffickers to send a low-range signal to aircraft for drug drops. This discovery led the Ladner family to a new hypothesis. Norman may have inadvertently encountered a drug transaction in the woods and was killed as a witness, potentially even recognizing those involved. The former DEA agent stated that based on the evidence presented by the Ladners, he did not believe Norman's death was a suicide and expressed confusion as to why the sheriff's department so quickly concluded the case. Norman Sr. and Charlotte also noted that Norman was carrying a wallet containing several $100s at the time of his death, but it was not found with his body. This missing wallet, if indicative of a robbery, would further contradict the suicide ruling. Despite the family's compelling counterarguments and new evidence, authorities, specifically Sheriff Lumpkin, maintained their stance that drugs were not involved in Norman's death and that it was a suicide. He reportedly advised the Ladners to give it up. This case is closed. Norman Sr. and Charlotte, however, consistently refused to accept this official determination. They continued their persistent quest for the truth surrounding their son's death. The ongoing conflict between the Ladner family and the sheriff's department fueled various rumors within the community, including speculation about the involvement of an organized crime group known as the Dixie Mafia in drug smuggling and murder within the state. A piece of information that emerged was an unconfirmed allegation that Norman's driver's license was later found in New York State. If accurate, this would contradict both accidental death and suicide theories, strongly suggesting a homicide. The background of Sheriff Lumpkin also came under scrutiny, with reports of his alleged involvement in illegal gambling related to dogfighting, leading some to speculate about a potential connection to drug smuggling and a desire to suppress any information related to a drug ring. Conversely, a rumor also began that Norman Sr. himself was involved in drug smuggling on his land, and that Norman Jr. witnessed something he shouldn't have, leading to a cover-up by Norman Sr., however. This theory appears inconsistent with Norman Sr.'s persistent efforts to have his son's death ruled a homicide, an outcome that would have made him a suspect. Another unconfirmed rumor suggested Norman was not alone on the day of his death, and that a friend killed him and escaped. Sadly, Norman Sr. passed away in 2003 and was laid to rest next to his son. Norman Jr. Sheriff Lumpkin also passed away in 2007. For over 3 decades, 3 primary theories have persisted regarding Norman's death. First, that all official evidence is accurate, and he died by suicide due to undisclosed internal struggles in a familiar setting. Second, that his death was an accident, perhaps from a fall or an unintentional gun discharge. And the final theory, that Norman was murdered after encountering individuals involved in drug smuggling or other illicit activities in the woods, becoming an unwanted witness. Despite the passage of time and the family's persistent efforts, Norman's case has never been reopened for further investigation. Charlotte Ladner and her other children continue their search for answers, hoping for justice in Norman's unsolved case. The events leading to Ruth Barber's disappearance began on May 31st, 1984. At approximately 1:30 p.m., Ruth departed from her workplace, the Bobby Maggie's Club in Gulfport, Mississippi. She entered a taxi cab accompanied by a female co-worker. At this time, reports indicate that Ruth was significantly intoxicated. The taxi transported them to the Holiday Inn located on Highway 90 in Gulfport. Upon arrival, Ruth's co-worker exited the vehicle and proceeded towards the hotel entrance. When the cab driver attempted to engage Ruth's attention, he discovered she had lost consciousness in the back seat of his vehicle. The cab driver then sought guidance from Ruth's co-worker regarding what to do with the unresponsive passenger. The co-worker's response was reportedly dismissive, instructing him simply to do whatever he wanted with Ruth before she left the scene. The cab driver then attempted to rouse Ruth. She eventually regained consciousness, reportedly uttering the phrases, "Where am I? I want to be with my baby." Following this, she exited the taxi and was observed walking in the direction of the nearby beach. The cab driver subsequently drove away. However, he soon realized that Ruth had inadvertently left her purse in his vehicle. He then returned to the Holiday Inn, where he located Ruth's co-worker. The co-worker advised him to turn the purse over to the police, which the cab driver then did. From that point forward, Ruth Barber has never been seen or heard from again. The circumstances leading up to her disappearance also contain an unusual detail. Shortly before May 31st, 1984, Ruth had been in California in the company of a male companion. This individual was reportedly wanted by the FBI for unspecified reasons. Ruth and this man had traveled to Mississippi to celebrate Ruth's daughter's birthday. Following this visit, Ruth decided to remain in Mississippi with her daughter and took a job at the Bobby Maggie's Club. The exact circumstances surrounding Ruth Barber's disappearance remain unclear and perplexing. Her case remains unsolved, with many questions persisting about what transpired after she walked towards the beach that afternoon in Gulfport. Jerry Armstrong, a senior at Hernando High School and a quarterback on the football team, was last seen in Hernando, Mississippi on December 23, 1977. That evening, he had borrowed his brother James's white two-door 1973 Pontiac Lemons to attend his school prom at the National Guard Armory. Following the prom, Jerry drove his girlfriend home. After dropping her off, he vanished. Jerry Armstrong has never been heard from again, and the distinctive car he was driving, a white 1973 Pontiac Lemons with red and black racing stripes and Mississippi license plate number day 485, was never recovered. One prominent theory surrounding Jerry's disappearance suggests he may have been targeted by the local Ku Klux Klan in a case of mistaken identity. His brother, James, was reportedly dating a Caucasian woman, a relationship that could have provoked anger from the Klan. It is hypothesized that Klan members might have attacked and murdered Jerry, believing him to be James, who they ostensibly wished to harm. Tragically, James Armstrong died in 1984 from a gunshot wound to the chest. However, both his mother and his other brother, Johnny, expressed strong doubts about this explanation, believing it to be questionable. Johnny Armstrong has publicly criticized the police investigation into Jerry's 1977 disappearance, asserting that authorities failed to conduct a thorough inquiry. The current investigating officer on Jerry's cold case has noted that valuable documents are missing from Jerry's original police file, further impeding progress. Despite the family's suspicions and the missing documentation, authorities have stated that they have not ruled out any possibilities in Jerry's disappearance. However, they describe Jerry as an ordinary teenager with no known enemies and no apparent reason for anyone to want to harm him. He maintained a steady relationship with his girlfriend and held a job at a local gas station, suggesting a stable and unremarkable life for a high school senior. Jerry's mother passed away in 1987, still without answers regarding her son's fate. His brother, Johnny, remains alive and continues to hope for clarity and resolution in Jerry's disappearance. The case of Jerry Armstrong remains unsolved. Angela Lee Freeman was born on January 16, 1976. Her mother, Deborah Freeman, was 16 when she became pregnant. Angela's biological father was a significantly older, married man. Deborah chose to sever ties with him and raise Angela with the support of her parents, Clyde, Al, and Jean. Angela grew up in a supportive household, often described as having 3 moms due to her grandmother's presence. Deborah later married and had another child, Nicholas. After a difficult marriage, Deborah divorced and focused on raising her children. Angela and Nicholas shared a close bond, and Angela was known for her sweet yet spirited nature, always well-dressed and adventurous. As Angela entered her teenage years, she experienced a period of defiance, common in adolescence. This led to clashes with her mother. At one point, Deborah sought external counseling for Angela through a program that seemed to help her for a time. However, Angela's behavior soon reverted. When Deborah began dating and eventually married Bill, a much older man, tensions escalated in the home. Angela felt a shift in her mother's attention and often clashed with Bill, who was described as strict. This period coincided with Angela's own involvement in an on-again, off-again relationship with Stephen, a 22-year-old man, 6 years her senior. Angela was noted to associate with a rougher crowd, and her behavior intensified. She eventually dropped out of high school in early 1993, but held aspirations of obtaining her GED and pursuing a career in healthcare, possibly as a nurse or X-ray technician. Angela found out she was pregnant in May 1993, with a due date the following February. Despite the challenges of an unexpected teen pregnancy, Angela was excited to become a mother. Deborah, having experienced a similar situation, was concerned but supported her daughter. Angela expressed her pride in following in her mother's footsteps, even planning to name her baby Christina Lynn, honoring Deborah. However, issues arose concerning the baby's paternity, as there had been overlap in Angela's relationships with Stephen and Larry, a former co-worker's boyfriend. When Bill, Deborah's new husband, learned that the baby's father might be black, tensions escalated significantly in the home. Rumors later surfaced that Bill was a member or even a leader of a local white supremacist group. This created an untenable living situation for Angela, forcing her to temporarily stay with various family members. Angela found employment at a Crystal restaurant in Hattiesburg and befriended a coworker named Paula. The two made plans to move in together, which provided Angela with a sense of stability. She focused on working and saving money for her baby. Angela even attended Bill and Deborah's wedding on August 28, 1993, appearing happy. However, everything changed on Wednesday, September 8, 1993. Angela was in the process of moving in with Paula and had planned to stay at the apartment for 2 nights before returning home. She told Deborah she loved her and would see her on Friday. This was the last time Deborah saw or spoke to her. Paula last saw Angela on Thursday afternoon. Angela declined Paula's offer to run errands due to an OBGYN appointment and fatigue. When Paula returned later that evening, Angela was gone, leaving a note asking Paula to leave the latch lock undone, indicating her intent to return shortly. The last confirmed sighting of Angela alive occurred around 1 a.m. on Friday, September 10th, outside a Pizza Hut restaurant in Petal, Mississippi. She was reportedly arguing with Stephen, the store's manager, and her former boyfriend. Following this encounter, Angela was never seen alive again. Due to her transient living situation, her disappearance went unnoticed for nearly 12 hours. Ironically, Angela's uncle Randy drove past her silver 1984 Honda hatchback at the Old Mounted Bridge over the Leaf River in Perry County a couple of hours after she was seen at Pizza Hut. Initially, he didn't find it concerning, as the bridge was a known spot for young couples. However, hours later, passing the same spot, he noticed the car hadn't moved and the engine was cold. The driver's and passengers' side front doors were open and one back door was shut with grass caught in it. Sensing something was wrong, he immediately tried to contact Deborah. It took hours for Randy to reach Deborah, who was at work and had no reason to suspect anything was amiss with Angela. Once informed, Deborah frantically called friends and family, including Angela's grandparents and Stephen, but found no clues. Feeling all other options exhausted, Deborah finally contacted police. The investigation quickly became multi-jurisdictional, involving city, state, and county agencies from Perry County, Forest County, Petal, and Hattiesburg. Despite the number of agencies, the investigation was criticized by the family for being mishandled from the outset. Deborah arrived at the Old Mounted Bridge before the Perry County Sheriff's Office, even though the office was only 5 miles away. She waited an additional 30 minutes before calling them again to prompt their arrival. Upon arrival, law enforcement's demeanor was described as nonchalant. They did not cordon off a crime scene, nor did they secure Angela's vehicle. There was no immediate indication that any officer viewed the missing pregnant teenager as a priority or the scene as a crime scene. Instead, they quickly classified Angela's disappearance as a runaway case, despite the circumstances. A pool of liquid near the car, initially thought to be transmission fluid, was later confirmed by DNA testing to be Angela's blood. More blood was found inside the car. Days later, tracking dogs located one of Angela's white Keds slip-on sneakers in weeds near the car, with the other shoe beyond a locked gate leading to a private camp. Angela's purse and keys were never found, and a search of the Leaf River yielded no sign of her body. Angela is not believed to have left voluntarily. She had made a car payment and a layaway purchase shortly before her disappearance and bought groceries, which would contradict plans to run away. She also left behind a paycheck for over $200. Her mother and stepfather stated that despite not being exceptionally close, she would not have left the area without informing them. Angela's parents suspect a man seen washing his truck in Gulfport, Mississippi, at 2 a.m. the morning Angela vanished was involved. He had reportedly been hunting near the Old Mounted Bridge earlier. This individual has never been located or identified. Foul play is suspected in Angela's disappearance. Her family has publicly criticized the police investigation, asserting that authorities initially treated Angela as a runaway despite the discovery of blood, though the case is now being investigated as a criminal matter. Her loved ones believe she was murdered and claim to know the perpetrator's identity, but they have not publicly released the individual's name. Angela's mother held a memorial service for her in 2002. Angela Freeman's case remains unsolved. The story begins with the disappearance of Rachel Marie Anderson, then 13 years old, Kyle Nicholas Anderson, 9, and Cameron Jeffrey Anderson, 12. They were last seen in Fulton, Mississippi, with their mother, Leslie Allen, on April 11, 2000. School records from their respective schools indicate that Rachel's last day of attendance was April 5, 2000. Kyle's was April 7, 2000, and Cameron's final day was April 10, 2000. These dates mark the last verifiable instances of their presence before their sudden vanishing. The parents of these children, Jeff Anderson and Leslie Allen, had married in Wisconsin in 1985. Their lives were established there for several years until their marriage concluded in a divorce in 1997. Following the legal separation, Jeff Anderson relocated to Rising Sun, Indiana. Leslie Allen, along with her 3 youngest children, Cameron, Kyle, and Rachel, moved to Mississippi. Accompanying them were 2 of Leslie's older children from a previous relationship, Stephanie and Greg. It's important to note that Jeff had legally adopted both Stephanie and Greg, and both siblings lived with mental disabilities, receiving disability payments. This familial structure, with its complexities, set the stage for the unfolding mystery. The divorce decree outlined specific arrangements for the children, including a mandate for them to call their father, Jeff, every Saturday. Initially, these calls occurred, but over time, their frequency diminished. Jeff also had court-approved visitation rights, anticipating seeing his children for 2 weeks in both July and August of 2000. However, in April of that pivotal year, before these visits could occur, the children disappeared. Leslie's roommate provided Jeff with a critical piece of information. Leslie had reportedly left in the middle of the night with a truck driver, taking her 3 youngest children, Rachel, Kyle, and Cameron, but notably leaving Stephanie and Greg behind. From that moment, Leslie and her 3 youngest children have never been seen or heard from again. The roommate indicated they departed in a brown 1981 Chevrolet Capri Station wagon bearing Mississippi license plates. However, months later, a significant development occurred. This very vehicle was discovered abandoned on the family's own property, adding a layer of confusion and contradicting the initial narrative of their departure. Given the circumstances, it's widely believed that Cameron, Kyle, Rachel, and Leslie may have left Mississippi, possibly traveling cross-country. However, their subsequent whereabouts remain completely unknown. A lack of any digital or official footprint since their disappearance is a concerning aspect of the case. No educational institution has requested the children's academic records, suggesting they haven't enrolled in any formal schooling. Similarly, no medical facility has sought their health records, indicating they haven't received medical attention. Furthermore, there has been no discernible activity on Leslie's credit accounts, nor any verifiable evidence that she has held a job anywhere in the country since 2000. This absence of a digital or financial trail raises significant questions about their existence and well-being. The initial assessment of the case was a family abduction, a common classification when a custodial parent or guardian takes children against a court order. However, as the extended period stretched into years without any contact from Leslie or the children, and without any credible indication of their whereabouts, the classification began to shift. Law enforcement and those involved in the search grew increasingly concerned for their safety. The children's cases, despite continued investigation by Indiana police, remain unsolved, a stark reminder of the enduring uncertainty faced by their loved ones. Over the years, various theories have emerged to explain the disappearance, though none have been definitively proven. One theory suggests that the children might have become unintended victims, perhaps of the truck driver with whom Leslie reportedly left. Another line of speculation considers whether the disappearance was primarily motivated by a desire to simply evade existing custody arrangements, with Leslie choosing to go underground with the children. There's also been discussion about Leslie's potential mental or emotional state at the time, wondering if anxiety or distress could have played a role in her decision-making. A more tragic, accidental theory posits that the family might have encountered an unforeseen accident. This could involve their vehicle veering into a body of water, perhaps to avoid an animal on a rural road or due to unfamiliarity with the terrain. Speculative search areas have included various waterways and geographical features in Mississippi. These include Cummings Creek, Mackey's Creek, and Bay Springs Lake, a large body of water that marks the beginning of a lock and dam system, including the G.V. Sonny Montgomery Lock and Dam. Other potential locations include Beaver Lake Road, the John Rankin Highway Bridge, which some have noted for lacking guardrails in its center portion, raising concerns about potential vehicle incidents. Pool C Boat Ramp, the main Tom Bigby River, a pond at Lake Crest Drive, the I-22 bridge over the river, Reeds Creek at Russell Road South, Midway Marina, Arawamba Murphy's Landing, Saucer Creek Boat Ramp, and water along Highway 4, including the Jamie Whitten Lock and Dam, Pool B, and Blue Water Creek. These numerous potential sites underscore the vastness of the search area and the difficulty in pinpointing their fate. The Ohio County Sheriff's Office can be reached at 812-438-3636 for anyone with information pertaining to this case. The family, particularly Jeff Anderson, continues to hold onto hope. Joseph Schuyler Burnley, known to his loved ones as Sky, vanished under perplexing circumstances on June 3, 2016, in Rankin County, Mississippi. His disappearance followed a series of bizarre events, leaving investigators and his family with more questions than answers. Sky, a 27-year-old white male, standing at 5 feet 9 inches and weighing around 160 pounds, with hazel eyes and light brown hair, was last seen wearing a yellow short-sleeve button-down shirt, blue shorts, brown loafers with white socks, and a two-tone brown baseball cap. This detailed description came from a gas station surveillance video, capturing him just moments before his disappearance. Sky had several tattoos, including a kanji character and the phrase "get lucky" alongside a four-leaf clover. Born to Stacy Humble and Glenn Burnley, Sky was the eldest of three, with a brother, Shelby, and a sister, Madison. As a child, he enjoyed baseball and was a devoted fan of the Ole Miss Rebels football team. His upbringing was enriched by a large, loving extended family, and he remained very family-oriented throughout his life. His father, a musician, often saw Sky with his guitar in hand, hinting at shared passion. Although his parents later divorced, Sky gained a stepmother who also cherished him deeply. According to his mother, Sky had struggled with pill addiction in his youth. At 18, he faced a felony charge for possessing 5 Xanax pills at the Neshoba County Fair. The severity of this charge, considering the small quantity, led to a sentence at Walnut Grove, a state-owned, for-profit prison that once housed juvenile offenders. This facility was eventually shut down in 2016 due to extensive corruption investigations by the Department of Justice and the FBI, which uncovered civil rights violations. His family believes this early encounter with the justice system significantly altered the course of his life. After his release, Sky found work in construction and began a relationship. While he experienced occasional relapses, he also achieved periods of sobriety, sometimes lasting a year or more. A little over a year before he went missing, Sky and his girlfriend found solace and community in their shared faith, attending church activities and exchanging notes filled with scripture and expressions of love. Sky was particularly close to his 92-year-old grandmother, for whom he served as a caregiver at her home in Florence, Mississippi. He was known for staying in regular contact with his family and was not one to disappear without a trace. Just 2 days before he vanished, he visited his father and stepmother. Rankin County, Mississippi, where Sky disappeared, is a centrally located area, bordered by the Pearl River and the Ross R. Barnett Reservoir. While the capital city of Jackson lies to its west, the towns involved in Sky's case are in the suburban areas east of Jackson. With a population just over 155,000, the county is largely rural, characterized by forests and farmland. The chain of events leading to Sky's disappearance began on the evening of Thursday, June 2, 2016. Sky was at the home of his friend, Travis Brewer, near Whitfield, Mississippi. Also present were Travis's girlfriend, Amanda Morris, their 4-year-old daughter, and another friend, Matthew McCoy. Sky spent the night. Travis later informed police that he and Sky had ingested methamphetamine that evening. The next morning, Friday, June 3rd, they woke to a startling discovery. Both Matthew McCoy and Travis's 1988 Chevrolet pickup truck, along with Travis's cell phone inside it, were gone. The immediate assumption was that Matthew had taken the truck. Travis told police he contacted his carrier, AT&T, and used a GPS app to track his phone, which he believed was still in the stolen truck. The app indicated the phone's location near the intersection of Rankin Road and Bridges Road, just east of Brandon, Mississippi. The logistics of obtaining and using such an app in the moment, without his own phone, raised questions, possibly implying the use of a friend's device or a computer login. Around 9:48 a.m. that morning, Sky, Travis, and Travis's 4-year-old daughter were captured on surveillance video at an Exxon station near Greenfield Road. They were seen making purchases, including what appeared to be large water jugs, suggesting preparation for a search. This video provided the detailed clothing description for Sky on the day he went missing. At approximately 10 a.m., Sky, Travis, Amanda, and her daughter arrived at the location on Bridges Road in Amanda's sedan. Travis and Sky exited the car, splitting up to search for the truck in the surrounding woods. Travis went into the woods on one side of the road, and Sky went into the woods on the other. This decision to search on foot, rather than driving further down what appeared to be a well-maintained dirt road, seemed unusual if the primary goal was to find a truck. It raised the possibility that they were looking specifically for the phone, which might have been discarded in the woods. After some time, Amanda called out to Travis, expressing discomfort due to the heat in the car without air conditioning, with their 4-year-old daughter inside. Travis stated he attempted to find Sky, but was unsuccessful. The exact duration of their search remains unclear, but it seemed to be a relatively short period, perhaps half an hour. The idea that Skye could have gone so far into the woods in such a brief time, and then Travis would make the decision to leave him, was perplexing. Travis then drove Amanda and her daughter home. According to his account, he returned to the area to continue searching for Skye, but still couldn't find him. Travis stated he discontinued his search for Skye around 2 p.m. Skye's cell phone, shirt, and cigarettes, purchased at the Exxon station, were left behind in Amanda's car, which Travis was aware of, adding to the alarm. The next morning, at 1 a.m. on Saturday, June 4th, 15 hours after he realized Skye was missing, Travis placed a 911 call to the Rankin County Sheriff's Office. He reported his truck stolen and mentioned that he had located it, badly damaged, around 2 p.m. the previous day, off I-20 near Pearl, Mississippi. The timing was confusing, as 2 p.m. was also the time he claimed to have abandoned his search for Skye. Pearl is west of Brandon, closer to their homes than the initial search location on Bridges Road. This implied Travis had somehow known where to find the truck, despite it being in a different location. As an almost afterthought during the 911 call, Travis mentioned that his friend Skye, who had helped him look for the truck, was now missing and he couldn't locate him. It wasn't an official missing persons report, but rather a detail added to the stolen truck report. After calling 911, Travis went to Skye's uncle's house, leaving a note for Skye, knowing he didn't have his phone. The note read, "Travis, Skye's friend. He is missing. I'm worried something bad has happened." The wording of the note, particularly the self-introduction, struck some as odd, despite Travis having worked at the uncle's place previously. Skye's uncle then contacted Skye's father, Glenn, informing him about the note and providing 2 phone numbers listed on it. Glenn called one of the numbers and spoke with Travis, who reiterated his concern and offered to help search. Glenn, however, decided to immediately file a missing persons report with the police, as Travis had not. By Sunday afternoon, just 2 days after Skye's disappearance, over 100 people joined the search. Search and rescue teams, mounted searchers, tracking dogs, ATVs, and helicopters equipped with FLIR cameras scoured nearly 400 acres in the area where Skye was last seen. Despite the extensive efforts, no sign of Skye was found. Days later, police discovered Travis Brewer's cell phone lying on the grass in a wooded area off Bridges Road, just feet from Brewer's front yard in Pearl, Mississippi, and nowhere near the area where Brewer and Morris claimed they had been searching with Skye. Matthew McCoy, who was subsequently charged with stealing the truck, admitted to having thrown the phone out the window of the stolen vehicle. Travis Brewer and Amanda June Morris were the last known individuals to have seen Skye. Following his disappearance, they were both arrested on misdemeanor drug charges. Authorities found evidence of drug use at Brewer's home in Pearl, Mississippi, where Skye had spent the night before he vanished. Investigators stated that all 3 individuals were involved in the drug trade. Brewer admitted that he and Skye had both ingested methamphetamine on the day Skye disappeared. Investigators noted significant discrepancies in the witnesses' stories and are treating Skye's disappearance as a probable homicide. While Amanda Morris passed a polygraph examination related to the case, Travis Brewer showed deception when he answered no to the question of whether he knew what had happened to Skye. He is considered the prime suspect in Skye's disappearance. Authorities theorized that Skye may have been lured into the woods to be killed. A street gang, the Simon City Royals, is believed to be connected to the case. One theory suggests that Skye had stolen drugs from a dealer in Jackson, Mississippi, and his death may have been a retaliation for the theft. At the time of his disappearance, Skye did not typically carry cash. His consistent communication with his grandmother, whom he cared for, further highlighted the unusual nature of his sudden vanishing. Joseph Schuyler Burnley's case remains unsolved, leaving investigators desperate for answers.